A life form thriving where it does not naturally belong, reproducing locally and sometimes occupying entire areas, taking over and outcompeting local native species. Sounds a bit like how the Europeans took over America from the Native Americans, right? Maybe just a little. But however, this is not a history lesson. This has more to do with the future of our environment in Zambia. Welcome to Our Environment, Our Future. Our focus on the program today is invasive alien species in Zambia. I'm your presenter, Ruth Wenzu Witola. For decades, alien plants and animals have enjoyed unrestricted access to new environments within Zambia. Some of these have spread and multiplied to a point where they have detrimental and often irreversible impacts on our environment and lives. Many of us know little or nothing about these environmental problems in our country. Understanding what invasive alien species are, how they are introduced, spread, and how they impact our livelihood is of great importance if we are going to achieve a healthier environment in Zambia.
When you look at these invasive alien species, we are talking of plants, animals, or microorganisms that are introduced from outside of an ecosystem. When we talk about an ecosystem, we are talking about an area. For example, if it is in the water, it could be in a forest or wherever it is, that's an ecosystem. You introduce this alien or this foreigner who comes in without their natural enemies. Natural enemies meaning that, every plant has some pest that disturbs it at some point. Even as human, we suffer from diseases. At some point we get sick, then we get well, and all that. Those are natural enemies which will attack us at some point or another. So now these plants come without that. So when they come, they're introduced in an area. They find that the area is very much suitable to their survival because they don't have anything to disturb them. And then because of that, they take advantage and grow, and then they may outgrow the plants that they find in that area. Some may even take over, where they just grow and then other plants die off, such that this introduced plant becomes the only one that is growing there. Or others may even produce some toxic chemicals or poisonous chemicals into the soil, which will kill other plants.
Many invasive species are introduced into a region accidentally, while others are brought to a new area on purpose. Often, these are introduced as a form of pest control, as pets, or for farming or other economic activities. There are several invasive alien species present in Zambia. Some of the most common include Lantana Camara, water hyacinth, locally known as Kafiwe weed, Kariba weed, and the now tilapia fish, among others. Spread out in different parts of the country, these invasive species are causing numerous environmental and economic challenges.
You are welcome to Livingston and to one of the sites that we manage, the Victoria Falls World Heritage Site in particular. Of course, there are a number of challenges that come with managing a site of this status. And one of the conservation challenges that we in particular face as management in managing this site is that of the fast spread of invasive alien species. We have Opuntia species, we have Trichonia species, and the most aggressive and difficult to control here is the Lantana Camara.
Lantana Camara, currently, it's very difficult to know where it is not found, but it is easier to know where it is found because it is one plant that has become so widespread in the country that wherever you go, you find that it is there, and people are even selling it as ornamental plants. We have worked with Lantana Camara in the Mosotunya, that is the World Heritage Site in Livingstone. In that area, Lantana, because it is a fast growing, one of the issues that happens there is that, if you look at the Mosotunya, it has that mist spray from the falls that is creating some sort of a rainfall that is falling for most parts of the year. So now, because of that rainfall, that water that is watering that area, there's a unique type of vegetation that is coming up there. A variety of plants that are growing in that area. So now, because of the lantana that has infested that area, you find that that unique vegetation type, which is some form of a tropical kind of vegetation, is getting disturbed. And when people now go there to view the Victoria Falls, instead of, not everyone goes specifically for the falls. People will go for different things. Some will just go specifically to, to just check out that unique vegetation, the differences that is in there. So now when you go there, you find that instead of viewing this unique vegetation type, what do you see? A stand of Lantana Camara growing all on its own in most of these areas. And in some cases, it grows where there's supposed to be maybe some grasslands. So when it grows, it just covers the area. Then when you're standing somewhere, because it has blocked your view, you can't even see the falls.
Lantana Camara was introduced to Africa in the late 1800s, but it only became a notable threat to the World Heritage Site somewhere in 1996. And around 1998, the National Heritage Conservation Commission made its first attempts at trying to control the invasive species. When we are controlling Lantana Camara here, we use mechanical or manual methods and intermittently use chemicals, although it's not something that we try to propel for obvious reasons, that we don't want to increase huge quantities of chemicals into this very specialized habitat. So we concentrate mostly on manual methods where we cut the lantana stem, and then where it seems to have matured very much, we then apply or brush chemicals on top of the stem. We use imazapyl chemical, which is able to enter the stem and inhibit the growth of the phloem tissues so much that the plant's ability to take up food and nutrients is compromised. So ultimately the plant dies. We also use the fell and remove method, which is the cut and remove method, where we just cut, uproot, and then remove from site to a dumping area. And so far we have scored successes in this venture, because you will not walk within the accessible areas and find huge colonies of invasive alien species. This is another good example of an area that was previously completely colonized by Lantana Camara. We have since been able to remove the invasive species and aid the ecosystem by physically replanting the area with indigenous species.
Behind me here, we are looking at a combination of invasive alien species. We have the water hyacinth down here. As you can see, it has some nice purple flowers. That is some attraction to people. That's how they are introducing it. And then we have up there the one that is standing there. That is the Papirifera Papyrus. It's an Egyptian pepper plant that is invading the Kafue River here. So this is a case of an invasive alien species blocking the waterway.
This weed you are seeing here that has blocked the whole, has been here for more than 2 months now. It's actually more than 2 months it's been here. All this area was covered completely up to here. All this, there was all weed right up to the end, not just the one portion. Then all this place was completely dry and filled with weed. These boats were taken out. There are boats there, you can see they are in a big line. They were all removed and packed at the other side because of the weeds.
Native to South America, water hyacinth is a free-floating aquatic plant that generally grows to as much as 1 meter in height. Forming dense mats that prevent navigation and fishing, blocking water supply intakes for irrigation, hydropower, and municipalities. This weed threatens one of Zambia's most important rivers, the Kafue River.
Kafue weed is one plant that it can grow in water as a floating mat. If the water is shallow, then it can root itself into the soil. It is green, shiny, and with a very beautiful purple flower. Where it is growing, that plant is, it is known to be very good at taking up nutrients. So because of that purifying of the water, what happens is that underneath that water body, there will be no nutrients. So those plants that are growing in the water, which provides food to the fish, will no longer be there because they will have no nutrients. All the nutrients would have been taken up by this Kafue weed. Now, because that nutrient is no longer there, that growth in the water is not there. And then the fish will have no food. So meaning that the fish population will reduce. So that is on the ecological side. So now, since the fish has reduced, a fisherman goes to fish, you find that there's nothing. Then on the other hand, the economic side, in a water body where we are using it for irrigation, we put up a canal to say, okay, we would like to use this water for irrigation. Try to pump that water. Most of what we may be pumping will be the plant, or the plant will just block up the intake point at which we are pumping this water. So it becomes a problem. It becomes expensive now to start clearing away that area. Then another issue is the power companies, where if this plant covers a river, what it does is that as the water is trying to go into through the intake point where it goes into the turbines to tend those turbines and generate electricity, it goes with the plants. And these plants, what they will do is that they will clog up and then they will jam the systems. So you find that then we have a deficit of power because of such problems. I noticed there are some areas where it has been controlled by simply removing them mechanically, where people go there and then they start pulling them out and throwing them away. Again, also the way you throw them it matters, because you have to throw them far away from the river so that in case there's a flood, they don't find their way back into the water. Certain other places, people have talked about chemical control, but that is not something that would want to put in a water body in the water, for obvious reasons that chemicals may have in a water system. Other systems that have been tried is what is known as biological control, where you introduce maybe some insects which will feed on that particular plant. And when they do, then you have to be careful also in selecting the particular insects, because you have to pick up an insect that is feeding exclusively on that particular plant, because if it is something that does not, when it finishes that plant, it will tend to other plants, and that will become a problem. Then there's also another method which is known as management by utilization. Find use for that, and then you harvest it and use it for that. Of course, you have to use it unsustainably so that you deplete it. And then above all, there's what is known as integrated pest management, where you use a combination of different methods to get rid of these. Kariba weed got its name from the fact that it was first noticed to have had problems on the Lake Kariba. It's one plant which is, scientifically they call it Salvinia molesta. It's a small plant. It's much more smaller than the kaffir weed. The Kariba weed is much more aggressive than the kaffir weed, because it can double in size of where it invades. Within 7 days, it can take up double the amount of space that it has taken up. Right now, the country has this problem in Lukanga swamps. There's a problem of the Kariba weed, which has affected the fishing industry there, economically and then ecologically. Also, it has had impact. This weed was first noticed in the Kariba, like I said, when the Kariba Dam was just constructed. As it started filling up, then the weed started infesting and covering the surface of this. It had covered up to 22% or so of the lake around that time. And this was managed using some biological control, that is introduction of some insects. Because it's one of the difficult plants. What it does is that even if you leave just a leaf in the water body, that is enough to cause an infestation. It will just start doubling, because it's a plant that grows without a seed. It can germinate from any part. It may be a leaf, it may be a stem, or any part of it. The Kariba weed can be controlled in the same manner as the kaffir weed, like I mentioned, because they are both aquatic or in water. They are found in water. They have more or less similar impacts in the water. So even their control measures could be the same as the kaffir weed, except that the Kariba weed is a bit difficult to control if you are talking of mechanical or manual control, in the sense that any part of it, if you don't reach it, you don't find it, it is enough to cause some infestation which may block the water body again.
Invasive species are not limited to plants. The Nile tilapia, a fish native to the Nile River basin, whose increase coincided with the collapse of the Kafua River fisheries, is one non-plant invasive species that has established itself in Zambian waters. Another example is the red clawfish. Originally from Australia, it is currently spreading rapidly in the Zambezi River basin through both natural means and further introduction.
The red claw crayfish was introduced through aquaculture. So there were people that wanted to grow this for the upmarket within Zambia. But unfortunately, these escaped from their cages and entered into our waterways, and now they have been spreading quite rapidly, covering much of the entire stretch of the Kafue River, and they're spreading, well, they started mostly spreading in Mazabuka area, and then they're spreading northwards towards Iteji, and now they're also occurring in the Lukanga swamps, and then you also have these species also occurring in the Zambezi system. And what they are causing is that they're causing a lot of competition with the native species, and some of these species, for example, the red crow crayfish is eating the eggs of the native species, and so you find that the production of the fisheries within these particular areas are being negatively impacted. The Nile tilapia also was an introduced species. You know, they brought it in and then they put it into our waters, and they have now spread. And what that is causing is that the Nile tilapia is you know, crossbreeding with the native species within these waterways, and also they are also outcompeting our native species because they grow very fast, and so they are outcompeting our native species for resources and food. And so you find that there's a reduction in the number of the native species, and there's an increase in these invasive species. What causes most of these invasive species, for example, the red crow crayfish and the Nile tilapia, is that they do not have natural enemies within our systems. And so because they do not have natural enemies, they are able to spread quite rapidly and spreading much more than the native species are.
Little can be done to eradicate invasive species completely once they establish themselves. There may be long-term prospects for limited control using carefully selected biological agents. However, in the short to medium term, control strategies are focusing on preventing and limiting their spread.
Firstly, if you are working in a wetland where there is an infestation, check when you are coming out what you might be carrying. Maybe you might step on a seed that will stick to your shoe or to your clothes, which you might end up transferring to another area. So those have to be checked, and then you clean yourself up. So preventing the introduction in other areas. Then there's what is known as rapid response. You see it coming up, moving as quickly as possible to get rid of it so that it doesn't spread. Because most of the times people have waited until an infestation becomes a problem.
So some of these things that are the species that are spreading are unintentional, because the people, they don't know that what they're doing can cause a harm to them. So we need to sensitize the people, and first of all, and for example, the communities also can play a part in that. For example, when there are certain species that are found that are occurring in their areas, you know, they can take a lead to try and remove them, or you know, reduce their number so that the local populations can thrive as well. But I think that the key issue here is sensitization, especially in the aquaculture system. So for us to stop the spread of, for example, the red crow crayfish, you know, we need to really sensitize the local people there, especially in the aquaculture, the Ministry of Agriculture and all that, to more or less put a stop in terms of spreading these species elsewhere where they're not occurring at the moment.
The best way to fight invasive species is to prevent them from occurring in the first place. We continue to pay a heavy price for the ecological, economic, and social damage brought about by invasive alien species. We all need to take an active role in creating awareness and preventing the spread of invasive alien species in Zambia. This has been Our Environment, Our Future. My name is Ruth Benzuitola. Bye for now.